Welcome to our 71st day on the trail. There are 5 readings for today, from Acts chapter 18, verse 18 through chapter 19, verse 22, Leviticus chapter 5, verse 14 through 7:10, the 74th Psalm, 1 Chronicles chapter 9, verses 3 through 16, and the book of Tobit chapter 1, verses 1 through 9. As we start our third book of the Apocrypha, the book of Tobit, I thought a few words of introduction might be helpful. The Book of Tobit is a historical religious novella, a work of fiction, which is included in the Catholic and Orthodox Old Testament canons, or their library of the Old Testament. While the book was likely composed in the 3rd or 2nd century BC, which would have been following the construction of the Second Temple in 515 BC, and prior to the persecution of Antiochus Epiphanes IV in the mid-2nd century BC. The events that Tobit describes are actually set in the 8th century BC, which would have been following the destruction of the northern kingdom by the Assyrians in 722 BC. Now, while Tobit is fictional in nature, it draws on themes and literary devices that would have been at home in apocalyptic books like Daniel and 1st Enoch. Fragments of Tobit in Aramaic and Hebrew have been found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. However, the entire book of Tobit has been preserved in the Greek Old Testament. Now, the story of Tobit follows the life of a pious, righteous Israelite from the tribe of Naphtali, who was deported to Nineveh following the Assyrian conquest. Despite his faithfulness to Jewish law, as we see in the first chapter, Tobit will face severe trials which will test his devotion to God. The book weaves themes of family, prayer, and angelic intervention as it centers on Tobit's son Tobias and his journey guided by the archangel Raphael. As we saw in Job, God is active in the life of Tobit, orchestrating events for the righteous and acts for the good of those who are encountering seasons of suffering. Earlier in Acts 18, Paul meets Aquila and Priscilla. Now, Aquila was of Jewish descent and a native of Pontus. He was driven from Rome by the Emperor Claudius. Now, Suetonius writes that the Jews were banished from Rome because of constant rioting over Chrestos, which was possibly a reference to Christ. Aquila and Priscilla were both tent makers, and since they are of the same trade, they work with Paul for a time. During this second missionary journey, Silas and Timothy returned to Paul. And Timothy's return from Thessalonica at this time may have likely prompted Paul to write a letter to the Thessalonian church, which we know as 1 Thessalonians today. Also during this period, Paul experiences a vision in which the Lord assures him of his mission. In Acts 18, beginning in verse 9, one night the Lord said to Paul in a vision, "Do not be afraid, but speak and do not be silent, for I am with you, and no one will lay a hand on you to harm you, for there are many in this city who are my people." Later, Paul is brought before Gallio, whose proconsulate in Corinth is dated between AD 51 and 53. This provides us with one of the surest dates for Paul's travels. Another point of note is when Paul leaves Corinth and sails to Syria. At Cenchreae, Paul shaves his head to fulfill a Nazirite vow per Numbers chapter 6. This is one indication that Paul continued to follow certain Jewish practices. In Acts 18, verse 23, Paul begins his third missionary journey, beginning by traveling to Galatia and Phrygia to strengthen the disciples. During his visit to Ephesus, Luke highlights the healing powers of Paul, as well as his dedication to correcting and encouraging the disciples of Jesus through his teachings. One of the most striking stories of the power of Jesus at work through Paul is found in the encounter of the 7 sons of Sceva. In Acts 19, beginning in verse 13. Then some itinerant Jewish exorcists tried to use the name of the Lord Jesus over those who had evil spirits, saying, I adjure you, by the Jesus whom Paul proclaims. 7 sons of a Jewish high priest named Seva were doing this. But the evil spirits said to them in reply, Jesus I know, Paul I know, but who are you? Then the man with the evil spirit leaped on them, mastered them all, and so overpowered them that they fled out of the house naked and wounded. When this became known to all the residents of Ephesus, both Jews and Greeks, everyone was awestruck, and the name of the Lord Jesus was praised. As a result of this encounter, the Christian community was strengthened, and respect among the general public increased. Also, pagan practices, such as the use of books regarding magic, were publicly abandoned. Jesus was not another magical name, or a power that could be invoked at will or even controlled. Instead, we are invited, by grace, into a powerful, eternal relationship with the living God, a relationship that we do not control, but by which we are defined. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, stay on the trail.